I wasn't born into money. I was born into something far more dangerous, a worldview of scarcity. My earliest memories aren't of opportunity, but of rationing, watching my parents debate bills at the kitchen table, clipping coupons like survival tokens, avoiding risk as though risk itself was a disease. Poverty wasn't measured in the absence of dollars, it was measured in the presence of limitation. And once limitation is accepted as law, you've already surrendered to your prison. Machiavelli said it well. The most fortified walls are built not of stone, but of thought. In my hometown, money wasn't just scarce, it was taboo. People didn't admire wealth. They resented it. Success was defined as modest survival, bartending until closing, selling cars on commission, piecing together enough to keep the lights on. Ambition beyond survival wasn't suppressed, it simply didn't exist. No one dreamed of breaking the roof because no one believed the roof could be broken. At 17, I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It wasn't just a book, it was a mirror. For the first time, I saw not only my father's scarcity mindset, but the collective virus that infected everyone I knew, teachers, neighbors, even friends. The unconscious belief that wealth belonged to others. That single awareness cracked the foundation of my world. I realized I had to escape not only geographically, but cognitively. Proximity is power, and where there is no ambition, there is no contagion of growth. 3 days before my college graduation, I skipped the ceremony. I loaded my car and drove west. Not because I had a plan, but because I knew staying meant death, not physical death, but psychological death. And that decision revealed the first principle of rewiring reality. Never accept counsel from those who have less than you seek, not even if they raised you, especially if they raised you. Advice is influence, and influence is the first battlefield of power. Would you let a sick man diagnose your health? Would you let a coward teach you courage? Then why let a financially powerless person dictate your financial destiny? Judge advice by outcomes, not by affection. Even love can mislead if it lacks wisdom. I didn't move west for sunshine or escape. I moved to calibrate. I needed to surround myself with people who had more money, more resilience, more results. Environments are teachers, and they whisper lessons even in silence. Sit among ambition, and you absorb it without effort. Sit among stagnation, and you suffocate, slowly, comfortably, unnoticed. Here's a truth most people deny. Your old circle won't cheer for your ascent. Their loyalty dissolves at the first sign of your elevation. Why? Because your growth exposes their inertia. If you risk more, if you earn more, if you succeed, they are forced to face their own inaction. Relationships don't collapse because you change, they collapse because they don't. And if your rise doesn't benefit them, they will resist it, not out of cruelty, but predictability. As Machiavelli noted, men forget the death of their fathers sooner than the loss of their patrimony. To them, your growth feels like theft, even if they never gave you anything. I learned this through mentors too. My first mentor was invaluable until he wasn't. He taught me to build, but when I surpassed the scale he had ever achieved, his advice transformed from guidance to hindrance. He was navigating shadows he had never stood in. His counsel became a blindfold, and yet I clung to it out of loyalty. That was my mistake. Influence, like medicine, must be upgraded as the illness evolves. When your challenges outpace your teacher's experience, you must seek new authority or risk inheriting their limits. I saw the same pattern with peers. I once shared my next financial target with a friend. His response wasn't curiosity or encouragement, it was confusion. Haven't you already made enough? The implication was clear. Beyond survival, ambition becomes greed. For him, wealth was indulgence. For me, it was evidence proof that I was creating value at scale. That was the day I realized this. You must hide your dreams from those who have already surrendered theirs, not because they're villains, but because their frame cannot hold your vision. Taking financial advice from someone with less money than you is like following a broken compass. It doesn't mislead you immediately. It just guarantees you'll stay lost. Even well-intentioned counsel is calibrated to their ceiling, not yours. Your ceiling must be higher. Even the Federal Reserve confirmed this. Individuals surrounded by higher-earning peers eventually increase their own earnings. Wealth is contagious, but so is mediocrity. In every arena, fitness, relationships, business alignment matters. If you want to rise, place yourself among climbers. The second law of transformation is this: money rewards speed, but wealth demands patience. They are not enemies, but they are not the same. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors the bold, but it is only the wise who hold what the bold attain. The man who hesitates will miss opportunities, but the man who rushes permanence will ruin himself. True power lies in knowing which game you're playing. Most financial choices fall into two categories: reversible or irreversible. Early on, when you're building capital, most decisions are low stakes. Launch quickly, adapt, iterate. Momentum matters more than precision. But when it comes to preservation, investments, ownership structures, partnerships, haste becomes poison. These require slower, colder, more calculating thought. One of my friends exited a company for $10 million. Instead of pausing to recalibrate, he scattered his fortune across speculative plays he barely understood. 4 years later, $9 million was gone. The skills of the builder are not the skills of the governor. One requires audacity, the other, calculation. The third principle is deceptively simple. Where attention flows, fortune follows. Most people don't lack energy. They misdirect it. They obsess over savings while ignoring income. They fixate on budgeting while neglecting growth. Early in my career, I did the same. I cooked every meal, cleaned my house, did every menial task to save money. It cost me not in dollars, but in bandwidth. Then my manager sliced through my delusion with one comment: "What if you just use those hours to make more sales?" It was Machiavellian clarity. Don't protect what you have, expand what you control. You cannot shrink your way into sovereignty. Saving is survival, earning is power. Later, I advised a CEO whose company had plateaued. His calendar revealed the problem. He was consumed with protective tasks, guarding against losses, plugging leaks, optimizing spreadsheets. Prudence disguised as perfectionism. He feared waste more than he desired growth. When we redirected his time toward revenue, his company grew 30% in a single quarter. The economy doesn't reward plugging holes. It rewards drilling new wells. This isn't just productivity, it's identity. When you center attention on saving, you train your nervous system to fear lack. When you center attention on generation, you create the posture of expansion. Invisible, but absolute. One study even found that entrepreneurs focused on revenue outperformed those obsessed with costs by 25%. The fearful were outrun by the bold. Most people try to get rich by thinking small. They think frugality is strategy. But money does not respect fear. It respects movement. The man who plays defense builds nothing. The man who plays empire multiplies. And so the psychological reprogramming begins. Convert every hour from maintenance to multiplication. The fourth principle emerges once you start making real money. Excess doesn't guarantee clarity. In fact, the more resources you acquire, the easier it is to mask incompetence. People begin throwing cash at problems instead of interrogating them. Frugality, when used strategically, sharpens perception. It forces you to innovate, to distill, to create leverage. The truth is, abundance can make you sloppy. Scarcity, properly harnessed, makes you sharp. History proves this. Many of the greatest empires were forged in constraint, not comfort. I learned this brutally. Before the sale of one of my companies, I tasked a law firm with ensuring full compliance. 6 weeks later, they delivered a $770,000 invoice and a report flagging over 1,000 issues, most of them irrelevant. I had paid nearly $1 million for noise, not clarity. So I sat down myself, stripped away the excess, and distilled everything into a single one-page framework. That page became the backbone of our entire portfolio's legal discipline. It cost nothing, yet delivered more leverage than an army of attorneys. This is the Machiavellian truth. Complexity is often a mask for incompetence. Real power lies in cutting through pretense. The fifth principle is psychological but essential. Build an oh shit fund, a war chest. Not for optics, not for investing, but for psychological freedom. When all your money is in motion, you're a prisoner of fear. Every decision becomes contaminated by desperation. You hesitate, you cling, you lose edge. But once you know failure won't destroy you, your mind regains clarity. Machiavelli warned that princes who depend on fortune are always exposed. Those who secure their base, however, are free to gamble at will. That was my first move, after clearing debt building, my personal buffer. It wasn't about safety, it was about sovereignty. The moment I built it, I could pursue risk like a general who knows his homeland is untouchable. I remember advising a portfolio CEO who wanted to expand aggressively: new offices, new markets, millions on the line, but he was suffocating. I asked about his personal finances. He admitted he had just $40,000 in the bank. No insulation. His fear wasn't irrational, it was logical. We stopped expansion immediately and focused on protecting his psychological base. Only then did he move boldly. This is why burn the boats advice is theater, not strategy. Most who risk everything aren't strategic. They're addicted to adrenaline. Those who wish to build dynasties, not spectacles, understand, never gamble with your survival. Control breeds composure, and composure allows for colder, sharper bets. The sixth principle is ruthless. Any opportunity that demands urgency is usually a trap. Pressure distorts perception. Urgency disguises manipulation. Every time I've rushed into deals from fear of missing out, I've regretted it. My worst financial mistake, millions lost, came not from ignorance, but from haste. Another buyer appeared. I panicked, and I committed without full diligence. I wasn't making a choice. I was reacting to pressure. Wealthy minds don't operate that way. They are immune to artificial scarcity. They will walk away, even from lucrative deals, if the terms violate their timing. That isn't hesitation. That's command. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are notorious for their patience. They've waited years for a single investment. Not because they lack courage, but because they understand this law. Rushed money decisions are flawed money decisions. A national study even found that 68% of people who rushed financial choices regretted them. That's not failure, it's predictability. And it's not just business. Walk into any store. A clerk tells you 5 other people are looking at the same item. You feel compelled to buy. Later, you regret it. Why? Because it wasn't your decision. It was puppeteered by scarcity. When urgency controls you, you're no longer the buyer, you're the bait. A Machiavellian mind remains unmoved, unhurried, calculating. Wealth isn't built by resisting pleasure. It's built by detecting manipulation. The seventh principle may sting. Money is not a moral achievement. It's not a reflection of character. It's a game cold, scalable, governed by rules most refuse to learn. Early in my career, I believed wealth was a reward reserved for the best. Those who worked hardest, thought deepest, helped most. That illusion collapsed at a mastermind event. A man took the stage and casually complained, "I've been stuck at $400,000 a month." I couldn't recall a word he said afterward. All I saw was someone I judged as less disciplined, less driven, yet he out-earned me by 40 times. It wasn't humiliating, it was liberating. If he could win, then the game wasn't about virtue, it was about mechanics. I called my father that night and told him I would never return to employment. The guilt I once carried, the belief that money had to be earned through suffering or moral purity, died in that moment. Machiavelli observed that men rise first to escape misfortune, then to rise to fortune. But this requires detachment, the ability to play without attaching identity to the outcome. Wealth doesn't reward virtue, it rewards strategy. Later, I sat across from a founder whose company was nearly triple the value of mine. I expected brilliance, innovation, genius systems. Instead, he was ordinary, not a better leader, not more persuasive. He just chose a better niche. I served gyms, a narrow pond. He served real estate professionals, a global ocean. He had more surface area to monetize, more room to fail, more margin for error. That's when I realized, sometimes the most powerful move isn't to build harder, it's to choose better terrain. This is the secret most ignore. They toil endlessly, perfecting a product, mastering delivery, grinding out effort, yet they ignore the market. They glorify struggle, worship hustle, moralize earnings, but data tells another story. The National Bureau of Economic Research found that only 20% of income correlates with IQ. The other 80% comes from timing, behavior, and market forces, which means this: intelligence often becomes a liability. Smart people overanalyze, hesitate, talk themselves out of movement. Meanwhile, those less intelligent, so long as they act, often prevail by default. I've even joked with friends, maybe I should try to be a little dumber, not in thought, but in hesitation, because paralysis by analysis is the death of momentum. As Machiavelli said, it is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. The eighth principle is simple but merciless. Money must be used. Possessing it doesn't grant power, deploying it does. When I sold one of my businesses and banked millions in dividends, nothing in my life changed. The number in my account grew, but I didn't. Because money, when static, is inert. It's like a sword left in its sheath. It has potential, but no impact. Only when placed into motion does it buy leverage, time, access, scale. So I moved it. We invested in software for a portfolio company, and its valuation doubled almost overnight. The software wasn't magic, the multiplier was. That was the lesson. Money becomes wealth only when converted into something that compounds. Otherwise, it's just sand in a vault. And this is where most entrepreneurs collapse. They make money, but then they freeze. They hoard. They wait for the perfect idea. And in that hesitation, time erodes power. Money that isn't deployed decays. The ninth principle is blunt. What isn't measured cannot grow. In the early days, I built a net worth tracker. Every morning, my assistant updated it with revenue, debt, assets, and cash flow. Daily numbers. It wasn't about obsession, it was about calibration. By seeing money every day, I created a feedback loop between action and consequence. The emotional thrill of entrepreneurship faded quickly, but the data kept me locked in. Numbers reveal truth, and truth shapes behavior. There's research to back this. One study showed that people who weighed themselves daily during the holidays lost nearly 4 pounds, while those who didn't gained 5. No change in diet, no change in exercise, just awareness. The same law applies to wealth. Avoidance is a luxury the ambitious cannot afford. If you want to build an empire, you face the numbers, quickly, frequently, without flinching. And this leads to the 10th principle. Buy for both now and later. This is the difference between indulgence and investment. Most people act rich, fast, and stay broke forever. The wealthy delay optics to secure foundation, and eventually, they end up with both. I've lived both sides of this. Early in my journey, I was running a multi-million-dollar company while driving a Toyota with a cracked windshield. Meanwhile, one of my sales reps made $40,000 in a single month and immediately upgraded everything: car, apartment, lifestyle. By year's end, he was forced to downgrade again. The lesson was brutal but clear. Those who treat money as theater don't keep it. Those who treat it as strategy do. 2 of the wealthiest men I know don't look wealthy at all, at least not at first glance. They delay visible status. They're building dynasties, not Instagram feeds. Contrast that with another friend who hit $1 million a month and instantly began flying private, staying at 5-star hotels. I knew the clock was ticking. He wasn't spending strategically, he was spending psychologically, buying status because his self-worth hadn't caught up to his bank account. And I was right, he lost it just as fast. The real question every financial decision must answer is this: does it benefit both now and later? If the answer is no, wait, that's sovereignty. To brainwash yourself into wealth, you must strip away the worship of hustle and replace it with the discipline of power. Stop listening to those who fear money. Start listening to those who command it. And never forget this: money is not the goal. It is the signal, the tool, the game. And when you master the psychology behind it, you'll stop chasing it. It will begin to orbit you. But here's where I want to press deeper, because wealth isn't just about mechanics. It's about the invisible architecture of the mind. People often ask, what separates those who merely earn money from those who accumulate wealth? It's not knowledge. It's not intelligence. It's posture. The poor think of money as a lifeline. The middle class think of money as security. The wealthy think of money as a weapon, a tool to bend reality in their favor. Think about the biases wired into us. Loss aversion, for example. Neuroscience shows we feel the pain of losing twice as intensely as the joy of gaining. That's why most people play defense with money. They fear loss more than they desire expansion. But this bias is exactly what makes the wealthy different. They don't erase fear, they reframe it. For them, the greatest loss isn't losing money. It's losing time, opportunity, leverage. By flipping the bias, they make bold moves while everyone else clings to safety. Or consider the sunk cost fallacy. Most people continue bad investments, time, money, even relationships, because they can't let go of what they've already paid. The wealthy do the opposite. They cut quickly. They don't worship effort. They worship outcome. A failed investment to them isn't a wound, it's tuition. This detachment is what accelerates their rise, while others stay trapped in dead-end commitments. Cognitive biases enslave most people because they never examine them. The wealthy examine them, then weaponize them. They play against the grain of human psychology. Where others hesitate, they move. Where others cling, they cut. Where others envy, they study. And in doing so, they accumulate not just money, but power, the rarest currency of all. The paradox is that most of us are born into scarcity, not because of our bank accounts, but because of our beliefs, a worldview that normalizes survival instead of expansion. A mental cage that whispers, be realistic. But realism is just conformity disguised as wisdom. And here's the Machiavellian truth. Your reality is only as real as the limits you're willing to accept. Wealth begins not in numbers, but in psychology, not in strategies, but in sovereignty. Because until you unlearn the worldview of scarcity, no amount of money will save you. You'll hoard it, fear it, spend it recklessly. But once you rewire the lens, once you see money as a game, not a judgment, you are free. Free to multiply, free to move, free to build. If there's a final truth I want you to internalize, it's this. Money does not change who you are. It amplifies who you already are. If you are indecisive, money will magnify your hesitation. If you are reckless, money will magnify your ruin. If you are strategic, money will magnify your leverage. That is why the work must begin in the mind. Without psychological sovereignty, wealth simply exposes your flaws at scale. Consider status signaling. Most people treat money as a costume, cars, clothes, watches, houses. They believe status will give them power, but real power doesn't announce itself, it acts. Neuroscience shows that dopamine spikes not from possession, but from anticipation. The new car gives you a rush for a week, maybe a month, then fades. But building, scaling, conquering, those feed dopamine indefinitely because they expand possibility. Status purchases are a short-term sedative. Expansion is a long-term addiction. This is why the richest people often look normal in the beginning. They're not playing for applause. They're building invisible empires while others chase visible trinkets. And by the time they reveal their wealth, it's too late for the imitators to catch up. The game has already been won. There's another layer here, the illusion of fairness. Society conditions you to believe money should reflect morality, that wealth belongs to the most deserving. But the game doesn't care about fairness, it cares about leverage. The problem is that most people sabotage themselves by confusing the two. They wait to feel worthy before they act. They attach guilt to ambition. They seek permission from those who've already settled. And in doing so, they disqualify themselves from the very game they claim to want to win. I remember a conversation with my father. He told me, "Success will make you arrogant. And for a while, I believed it, until I realized arrogance wasn't the real danger, timidity was. Arrogance makes mistakes visible. Timidity ensures they're never made at all. One burns you, the other buries you. Which is worse? Philosophy helps here. The Stoics taught that wealth itself is indifferent. It is neither good nor evil. It is only the use of it that carries moral weight. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, wrote extensively on detachment from money, not because he rejected wealth, but because he mastered it. Wealth was his tool, not his master. That distinction matters. Most people fear wealth because they believe it corrupts. But corruption is not caused by money, it is revealed by it. The game doesn't create, it exposes. Now, let's tie this to modern psychology. Studies on decision fatigue reveal that the more trivial choices you make in a day, the weaker your judgment becomes. This is why the wealthy outsource menial tasks, not out of laziness, but preservation. Their attention is finite, and they refuse to squander it. Most people confuse busyness for productivity. The wealthy understand the currency isn't effort, it's clarity. 1 hour of sharp decision-making is worth more than weeks of scattered activity. This brings us to opportunity cost, the silent tax of mediocrity. Every hour spent protecting pennies is an hour not spent multiplying dollars. Every year spent in the wrong niche is a decade lost in compounding. Opportunity cost doesn't appear on balance sheets, but it devours potential relentlessly. The wealthy don't just ask, "What will this cost me?" They ask, "What will this prevent me from doing?" That's the real calculation. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Wealth requires betrayal, not of values, but of the worldview you inherited. You must betray the scarcity mindset of your family, your friends, your community. You must betray their expectations of modesty, their worship of survival, their loyalty to limitation, because if you remain loyal to their worldview, you will inherit their results. Loyalty to limitation is still limitation, and the price of loyalty to the past is always poverty in the future. But betrayal, in this sense, is liberation. You are not dishonoring your parents by transcending their mindset. You are honoring the possibility they never had. Every generation's duty is to expand beyond the last. To accept inherited scarcity as permanent truth is to betray not only yourself, but those who come after you. So let me leave you with this. Brainwashing yourself into wealth isn't about affirmations or hustle culture. It's about rewiring the architecture of your mind. It's about replacing scarcity with sovereignty. It's about mastering your biases instead of being enslaved by them. It's about treating money not as morality, but as mechanics. Machiavelli wrote that men rise from one ambition to another. The first ambition is to escape misfortune. The second is to rise into fortune. The third, rarely achieved, is to master fortune itself. Most never reach it because they refuse to detach their identity from the game. They want wealth to validate them. But true power comes when you no longer need validation. When money becomes signal, not salvation. When it orbits you, instead of you chasing it. And so I'll ask you, what worldview did you inherit? Scarcity or sovereignty? Survival or expansion? Because until you answer that honestly, no strategy will save you. The prison is not in your bank account. The prison is in your belief. And the key has been in your hand all along.